What's up, everybody? Welcome to season 1, episode 4 of the What's Your Story podcast. I'm Scott Leese, here with my co-host and partner and good friend and mentor, Mike Lindstrom. How's it going, big guy?
Going great. I can't believe it. We're getting through this bad boy, man. It's a heavy lift, but it's fun.
It's been a lot of fun. We've had 3 episodes go live so far. We've got 6 more that have already been recorded and are ready to be released. So it's going to be a busy month of November for us. I'm also flying back out there in November to record a bunch more episodes. So we've had a good start. We've had 3 episodes come out so far: Dave Scatchard, Susan Hwang, and Morgan Ingram so far. So we thought it might be a good idea to kind of recap what happened and what we kind of talked about in each of these episodes. So that's what we're doing here. And then we've got some random topics, kind of, news topics for us to kind of get into a little bit and mix things up for episode 4 here. So let's talk about the first guest that we had, the first show we released. This Dave Scatchard, former NHL great, and he went deep talking about his injuries and his journey back towards healing and kind of what he's working on now and helping other people here. What's like a couple things that stand out from that episode for you?
This is what I like about doing these, you and I, because we can kind of go back and give a little behind the scenes. First of all, what you don't see, and now that we say it, go back and watch it. Dave came in the studio that day on fire. Remember that?
Yes,
He was
I
on
do.
fire.
Yeah.
He had stuff going on with his real estate, and he's came up with these great ideas for his coaching programs. And he even said it if you watch the podcast, he goes, I didn't realize until like this moment, like this day has just been on fire. So that's one thing you don't see when you're on camera. But that was the one thing that I wanted to highlight was his energy when he walked in that day. Dave's always a high energy guy, but he was just like on another level. The second thing is I know Dave's story, like the concussions and the NHL and the pain and depression, all that stuff. But all the things that he's gone through, I didn't know the depths. Even the Robbins story, going to a Robbins event and trying to, transform himself. And he talks about lifting himself out of the rubble and looking at himself like a baby. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before. That's a big one for me. I don't know about you. What stood out to you?
Yeah. You, a little bit of a comic relief inside of a really powerful and painful kind of struggle for him. I was listening to it and I started laughing when he was talking about how he went to this Tony Robbins event and he didn't know Tony wasn't going to be there. But I thought that was funny, and I like when people can bring some comedic relief to the stories that they tell and things they're sharing and whatnot. Yeah, and I had I don't know about you, but I had a lot of friends who were former athletes who reached out to me and said, dude, I can relate to, this guy's ups and downs and kind of the injuries and the trauma and trying to figure out who you are when your athletic career is over and whatnot. So I thought it was a great way to kick things off. And, he's a great guy. So
Yeah, and he said that point blank. He said, when I came out of the NHL, I had no identity. I mean, he says that point blank. And I think a lot of people don't realize it doesn't matter if you're an actor or somebody, when you're put up high on a pedestal in the media and you no longer have that spotlight, it really messes with people. And it's not because I've been there. I know so many people who have, whether it's athletes or you're at the Super Bowl 1 year and 4 years later, you walk by people and no one wants your autograph anymore. It messes with your head. So for the fact that he talked about those things, I thought was important. And that was the biggest feedback I got from a lot of my friends was his authenticity, just his realness. And I love the fact that he used the word frequency. I don't use that word as much. I know that's not a word like we banter, like on our podcast. I have a different verb for it or word, but people related with that. When you're operating at a high frequency, you attract high frequency things. When you're a low frequency, you don't attract those high frequency things. People really resonated with that.
and all of the episodes that we recorded on those couple days that we were in studio, it seemed like we must be vibrating on some particular frequency because everybody was coming in authentic. They were talking about spirituality. They were talking about faith. They were talking about healing. I mean, straight up talking about, God and things that they, dealt with in their youth. And our second episode that we released was Susan Hwang, who's the founder of Best, which is like totally opposite of former NHL athlete, immigrant, comes over under difficult circumstances from Korea, comes from luxury, ends up in the total opposite of luxury with basically nothing and has to rebuild, everything from scratch. And now she's I'm affectionately sort of calling her the cannabis queen of the desert,
Yeah.
out there. Yeah, it was a different type of conversation with her. Especially loved hearing about how she came from this place where they actually were doing quite well, immigrated over here, and all of a sudden have nothing.
Yeah.
And that dichotomy of like starting over that was wild to me.
I thought the same thing. So the couple when we were sitting there in the interview, I thought, oh man, that could sound tone deaf, or it's going to come across wrong. That she came here and expected a red carpet. But people, once you hear the full story, what's rule one? Don't judge, be curious. You listen to the whole story. That's what they had in a different whole world, and the fact that they came here with virtually nothing and have to start over. That's amazing. I mean, you're used to living up here, and then you come down here, and you're living in a place that's not even a cornucopia. She was living in the middle of the country. It wasn't like she lived in California. I mean, she eventually came to LAX, but her first stopping point, I believe, was in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about that, and that was very difficult for her, she said, because she didn't speak any English at 12. One thing I want to highlight about Susan, because I got hit with this one. I don't know if you did, Scott. People were asking me, why are you guys muting out the word cannabis? Why aren't you guys speaking
Yeah.
to it? And that's not us. Okay,
Yeah. It's definitely not us.
that's not us. The rules that we have to play by, when I was posting on our TikTok channel, this is a true story. I didn't know this to the extent of it. You can only put certain hashtag words. If I would have put in cannabis community or marijuana of any sort, boot, there's this like censor that's taking place. So Susan was commenting with some of the folks on social media, say, now you see what I'm up against. I'm over here trying to run a legitimate business. I'm helping people, veterans of war, people who have cancer, people that just have this negative stigma about what it is, and they don't realize what they're really doing. And I understand there's that element out there. That's not the point. But the fact that you can't even on social media put the word cannabis or hashtag, marijuana education of some sort. Every social media platform has its own editorial process, but people don't know that. I think it's important
Yes.
people to hear that.
Really, that was really strange. I was not expecting that whatsoever. But what you talked about, her quote of like, now you see what I have to deal with. One of the most interesting parts of that conversation for me was when she was talking about the degree of difficulty to find properties for these businesses and all of the licensing and the zoning rules and all of this stuff. As she was walking through those stories of like, do you know how freaking hard it is for me to even open a retail store and all the rules and how long it takes and how much lobbying? And I was just like, oh my gosh, she's just out there hustling just to have the opportunity to submit paperwork for some of these things. I hadn't thought about that kind of back end administrative hassle that somebody has to go through in order to start one of these businesses or open up a second, third, fourth store. It was
I
pretty
think that's
crazy.
yeah, I think it shows her passion, because you and I could go sell products and open up a clothing line or whatever, and they'd be glad to take our money and pay the rent to the commercial development, and we would have zero problems. This woman has a passion for what she's doing, and anyone else who could just walk in there and hand a check over and say, hey, I want to start a business and here's what I'm doing. She's minus 10. She's got to get through 10 steps just to get to level 0, just to have the opportunity to go sell something.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Just to get where everybody else starts from.
Right. That's right.
The odds are stacked against her straight away. Just incredible story after incredible story of resiliency and grit and toughness and just overcoming all of these different challenges that she went through. And then we pivoted from there and we brought in my friend Morgan Ingram, who's the CEO and founder of a company called Amped. And I know him from the tech world. He has a huge following on LinkedIn, almost 200,000 followers on LinkedIn. And he started telling us some of the funniest stories. The funniest story ever was about Morgan. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing, but like he was the Atlanta private school system, elementary school system, like Pokemon kingpin. This guy had like a whole business structure with like people working under him and whatnot. I mean, I was not expecting to get into this Pokemon like business when he was in, sixth grade or whatever age he was. That was hilarious, that stuff.
Well, it's funny because I know that we have maybe a closeness with a certain relationship. Like you are closer with him than I was, and I thought maybe you guys had chatted about. I know we never give guests the questions in advance. That's part of our podcast. I don't have any idea. I know it's frustrating to some, but that's the deal. You're coming on, you sit in the chair. We're gonna come at you with what's your story and get at the stuff that's gonna matter. I thought maybe you guys had teased it. I'm sitting there on the couch thinking, where did they come up with this? It was you and I mean, at the end of the day, laughing, but shocked because I didn't expect him to go from this brand, guy out on LinkedIn building Amp Social. And then he starts talking about Pokemon cards. I'm like, wow, this is a pivot right here in the chair.
Yeah, it was hilarious. The only part that I sort of knew that I'd be able to get into was the pickleball stuff because I've been playing off and on for a while, and I knew he had been starting to play, and I knew he was passionate about it. And I did not know that he had a stated goal of trying to make the Olympics if pickleball becomes an Olympic sport. But one of the things that I admire about him is he's willing to call his shot. He puts it out there, whatever his goal is, and he doesn't have baby goals. He sets his goals like Mount Everest height, and he puts it out there for everybody to see, and then he goes after it.
Did you see his LinkedIn like in the last 24 hours?
Yes, in the last 24 hours, he just did that. Here's 10, like maybe 10 or 12, like huge, massive goals that he put out there. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, man, this guy calls his shot. Super admirable. Yeah.
That was I could have commented very lengthy on his post that if you haven't seen it, go back and check the post is and this isn't just like how to be a better marketer. He's talking about his life goals. And my rule, as you know, is what's written is real. So not only has he taken the belief that what's written is real, he now went public with what's written is real. So he just increased his odds. And that's true for anybody, by the way. You know this in goal setting. If you have a sales team and you put out your goal to your whole sales team and everyone knows your number because it's on the wall or whatever, you have a higher probability of success. So the fact that he's coming up with, these what they call them, the BHAGs or whatever you want to call them, big, hairy, audacious goals. He's now in a public domain and not just a few people, a couple 100,000 people on LinkedIn watching what he says. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah. And that's how we started off. What's your story? Those were our first 3 guests right there. We've got 6 more lined up. So I guess, 1 a week for the next 6 weeks, plus this episode right here. So we've got, like I said, a busy calendar coming up, and we'll be recording in studio a bunch more in a few weeks. So we appreciate everybody who's spent time listening to the show, who's downloaded and subscribed on Apple or Spotify or YouTube, who's following us on our TikTok page and our Instagram page, all this good stuff, and engaged with the content on LinkedIn that we've shared. We appreciate everybody, and send us your feedback. If you've got questions, if you have suggested guests for us, topics that you'd like to get into, we will respond to all of it and get into that stuff. So good start, man.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention real quick, since we have the platform here today to do it, the one feedback that I got, and you have to remember, you get, ages factor in. I've got some of my maybe older clients. They're like, hey man, I want to really support you, but I don't know where to go. Walk me right to it. It's, you think anybody anymore, they can just go on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. And you can, by the way, just go, what's your story? ? With Mike Lindstrom and Scott Leese, and boom, it'll pop up. Okay. That's the easy part. But we now know, because based off feedback, Scott and I'll be better at directing the links. I've had better luck going on my text thread. Because on my Samsung phone, Scott, my Google Samsung phone will allow me to text 100 people without a group chat. So that's what I've been doing. I go on to my clients and friends, and I just put the direct link with a quick note. And it's been probably the best direct marketing that we've done is the one-to-one, or picking up the phone like you have too, right? Yeah. So I understand when you're seeing this on social media, whether it's LinkedIn, and there's certain rules in that regard, right? You and I go on LinkedIn and we punch in 3 different hype links. It only attaches to one image, right? You only see like the Spotify image or the LinkedIn image. So there's rules that we have to play by too. But at the same time, it is easy to find. It is Apple. It's on Spotify, and it's on the YouTube channel. You can go check out any of our social media. But the key part is, what's your story? ? With. Once you do that, everything's searchable. I've been playing with it, so it's not hard to find.
Yeah. And we're going to break into a new demographic soon, because I'll be out there in Tempe in mid-November, speaking to a couple different sections and classes at Arizona State. There's about 1,000 students that I'm going to be in front of, and these students are going to get some extra credit for listening to the show, subscribing to the show. I kind of baked that into my
Yeah.
arrangement with the professors out there, so that'd be cool to
Whoa, whoa!
have some
Speaking of
students.
speaking of ASU, man, ASU. We got to pull for our boy. Speaking sports and ASU, Scatterboo, man. Everyone's pulling for this Scatterboo kid out here, and because he's the champion, and now he gets hurt. What do you think about this guy? I mean, Scatterboo. You like Arizona. Support it at heart,
Yeah,
even though you're out there in Texas. You got to support Arizona
love it.
sports. What do you think about this guy?
Oh, he's fantastic, man. I don't know if you know this, Mike, but he went to Sacramento State before Arizona State. So we even have the NorCal connection, you and I as well, with
Yeah,
this guy. His energy is great. His effort is great. His performance has been great so far this year. And I think, he must be devastated. And I think the entire New York Giants organization is probably devastated after his injury, because you're not just losing a player. Like, him and Jackson Dart are like the heartbeat of that entire franchise right now, and they re-energize things. Even if they're losing, there's hope there and belief there now. But from what I can tell, I have a feeling he's going to find a way to be extremely vocal in that locker room and still participate. And I just hope that he heals up pretty good, and maybe he can get back out there this year. I don't know the extent of the injury, but it's been pretty awesome, And
yeah. Oh,
I
Arizona.
remember watching Arizona State last year, all the games of ASU. I'm out here in Texas, and I was telling everybody, like, you got to pay attention to this guy. He should be in the Heisman running. And then we had this is painful memory, but we had Texas, essentially beat. It was like 4th and 15, and they scored. And after that game, everybody here was like, okay, that guy's legit. Or ASU was legit.
Yeah,
So,
what a lot of people didn't see on television when they watch it live, depending on where they watch it, the guy's throwing up on the sidelines during that game. Throwing up on the sidelines. Like, if your body is throwing up, it's telling you, okay, buddy, something's going on here. But nope, put the helmet back on, get in the game. Yeah, you're right. That was a tough loss. And let me tell you, Arizona is devastated. I'm sure that the anti-New York Giants fans are like touting it, going, yeah, I told you so. But you know what? That was such a random injury. It was his foot, not his head. It wasn't because he was pounding. He was just coming across the middle. He got twisted up. He'll be back, and you watch. He'll be back.
that's what everybody tried to say, right? Like, you can't play his style and not get hurt or whatever. But he didn't get hurt because of his style. This was just like a random thing, So
Yeah. What do we?
I hope he's back. And I know you're a Cowboys fan, and you don't need the Giants to be like amazing in your division, but it is a little more fun, when they're competitive and they have some people to root for and whatnot. It makes the rivalry better, right?
Look, I'm always I love champions. I love champions. And speaking of champions, what I have to bring up is the Dodgers. Now, even though I'm not a Dodger fan, you have to honor championship. Yes, for those haters out there, you're watching what's happening with Ohtani. Okay, the guy's hitting home runs and he's doing all this crazy, and he's pitching, doing stuff that's amazing. And then you see the camera panning down in the dugout, and you see him putting up the Gatorade and the water bottles for his teammates because he doesn't want to have anybody left behind, because he wants to take care of his teammates, right? Yeah, Yamamoto, right? Pitcher completes a full game, which hasn't happened in I don't know how long. What's he doing in the 6th, 7th inning? You pan down there and he's got a journal, and he's writing in his journal. I want to know what was he writing. I mean, I'm sure he's keeping track of his notes for his game, but what's written is real. We always talk about that, but it's amazing when you see that, whether it's the heart and hunger of like a Scatterboo, the gentlemanly nature of Ohtani, whether you like the guy or not, you can't argue with this guy's world impact. He's worth every penny. They've already won a World Series. They're on to probably get another one, right? But you see these kind of characters, and you just don't see that anymore, man. You see the flamboyance and you see the show off, and you just don't see those kind of championship athletes with that heart and hunger acting in that way, right?
Yeah. It's I wonder how much of it is cultural. Both these guys that you mentioned, they're from Japan. It's different culture, different way of life, different way of being. But you get everybody here in America watching those games, paying attention to these guys, and hopefully how they behave, not just how they perform, hopefully how they behave. I know I've had my conversations with my kids as we've been watching the playoffs, about Latani and how he's, not flashy, not flamboyant, does his job, seems like a good teammate, right? And man, I gotta tell you, he pitched like 6, 7 shutout innings and hit 3 home runs in one game the other day, and I thought that's probably the single greatest individual performance that I've ever seen
Yeah.
in 48 years. I've
Yeah.
watched baseball
It's,
for 48 years. I don't know if I've ever seen a better performance,
yeah.
honestly.
Yeah, no, I text a few of my Dodger buddies and say, "Hey, man, I bow down. I don't even know what to say. I'm
Mm.
still a baseball purist." But you know, the other thing about you talk about character, Yamamoto, he was the last angle I saw, he was picking up trash in the dugout, Scott. I
Yeah.
mean, that's one thing you love. I love seeing when you see international soccer. You know this being a soccer guy. There's
Yeah.
certain countries, and it is cultural depending on what country you're in, where people do that. They literally go
Yeah.
out and pick up after themselves. That's not an American cultural thing to
I'll
go
tell you
pick up.
I'll tell you a fun story about that. I went to the World Cup in Germany in, I believe, 2004, I think, right? And you buy beer, you buy soda, they give you this like hard plastic kind of commemorative cup, right? And to keep the stadium clean, and probably so they don't have to pay a bunch of staff to come clean it and all this kind of stuff, for every cup that you bring back to the concession stand, they give you €1. So you'd see people with 10, 20 massive stacks of these cups, and they'd bring them back to the concession stand, and you could exchange all these cups for a free soda or a free beer or whatever. That place was spotless at the end
Wow.
because everybody was just picking up all this trash, right? And I thought, man, that is a brilliant move, and I don't know why we haven't adopted that. And that just could lead you down a whole
Yeah.
horrible path. But like,
Oh,
I thought it was brilliant, man. These guys, yeah, kids were there trying to, grab cups and stuff like that. Oh, 'cause I got €1, I got €5, I got €10.
yeah.
It's a brilliant,
And
brilliant.
there's something I love that idea. The one thing that I think about this, and every time you and I have these conversations, even offline, and we don't have enough time to talk about this today, but I wanted to mention this real quick. So it kind of ties into this whole behavior thing when people aren't watching. It's what bothers you lately. You and I can spend 4 hours on an episode talking about what's been bothering you lately, Scott, and you'll have an answer. Well, this happened to me, and this happens to a lot of people. I was at Costco, and people don't return their carts.
Mm.
And it just happened to be, I almost backed into one. I wasn't paying attention. I'm on the phone probably. And I'm like, "Oh, man, why don't people just put their carts back?" And I'm looking off in the distance, and not only the one I almost backed into, but I see 3 or 4 other people and they're just leaving in the middle of nowhere. And I believe this, Scott. It's how you behave and how you act when people are not watching. When they're not watching, just like, picking up after themselves in the dugout. By the way, the guy just completed a game through 100 plus pitches. Most pitchers are already getting their arm iced. They're down, you know what I mean? They're down in the
Yeah.
dugout, past the dugout. I mean, they're already like out of their uniform. And this guy's hanging out with his team and doing these little things. It's those little kind of tiny things that go such a long way when people aren't watching.
But by the way, that was his second complete game in a row, by the way. So, if you ever had a moment where you're like, I'm a, sh- I'm on fire and, I don't need to do this today. Like, Mike, you could pick up my stuff. That could have been the moment, right?
Yeah,
But
it's
no,
not his
no,
character, man. Not
no,
his
not his
character.
character.
Not his character.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to leave. Well, I know we're coming up on time. I want to leave people with this. I know you and I are big readers, and we'll talk about this more in our questions maybe with future guests. But the book that came out in 24, it's called The Anxious Generation, and it's Jonathan Haidt. It's Haidt. Came out in 2024. You can Google it, read ChatGPT it. At our school, the teachers had highly recommended parents read this book. So it was a memo that
Mm.
went out to all the parents, and it talks about this study about these kids born after like 2008, 2010 are phone based childhood, right, versus play based. And he goes into this
Yeah.
whole psychology and study of how it affects boys and girls differently, how it affects body image, how it affects depression. I mean, this study is incredible, and I wanted to bring this up on this podcast because you and I have spent a lot of time talking about our 2 sons, and we can
Yeah.
be the best parents on the planet, teach them principles, how to be the best, how to show up when no one's watching, all those great things, how to be a gentleman. But it's something that we have to really address. We have to address this, putting the phone away for a full day, or, parking the phone at certain times, or they don't bring it to a restaurant. I mean, he talks about all these things in this book and the study. And I know that's something you and I've been passionate about. I don't know if you've had any more dealings on the home front because you have teenagers as well, but this is such an important topic that we have to
Oh
address as
yeah.
parents.
Yeah. I mean, just this week, my parents are here still, actually, visiting. Hadn't seen them in roughly a year. My dad's had some uh, eye surgeries and stuff like that, some health stuff that made it difficult to travel. And my kids are over, and I'm like, hey guys, let's spend some time with your grandparents. You can look at videos, or look at your phone, or text whoever you're texting. You can do that later, right? And yeah, it's not a crazy ask. It sounds pretty normal and reasonable, probably to most people. And their initial reaction, you can see the initial reaction in their eyes. It's like, uh, wait, what? You know, and that's just breaking a cycle is what that is. There's an addictive cycle with it, right? And
Yeah.
it's not even that I don't even think they're like, feel like they're missing out on something. It's just like such a ingrained, nasty habit to try to break away
Yeah.
from. It's like, you got to do it though, and I got to risk, pissing them off. I got to risk
Yeah.
annoying them or whatever. It's like, no, come on, this matters. And we've got other things that we need to do. And you can get back to, your digital world after you spend some time in the real world.
Yeah.
Right.
It's one of the things he talks about in here. He says that he labeled it too much protection offline and too little protection online.
Mm.
Meaning we're bubble wrapping our kids in reality.
Yeah,
We don't
yeah,
want them
yeah.
driving. We don't want them out and about, riding their bikes on a Saturday and not knowing where they were for a full day, stuff like you and I did, right? But we're letting them do whatever the hell they want to do when they're going into that universe called the cell phone. I mean,
Yeah, they
that
take
was
their phone, they go in their room, and God knows what they're doing.
that's right.
Right.
I mean, we
Yeah.
can say we're communicating openly and all this. We can put parameters on the phone, but the fact is, I don't care what they're watching. They could be watching something G-rated, but they're getting into this behavior, this brain rot, this death scroll that's constantly happening, and it's on us
Yeah.
as parents. I love it at our school this year. I think it was this past year. The school instituted this like no more cell phones. Period. Like you got to put them away, park them.
Yeah.
You can get
Ours did
a
that too. Yeah,
disciplinary action.
ours just did that too. If you get uh one warning, and then I think you lose it for the whole day, the next infraction, and your parents have to go in to get the phone back. You don't get it back. And then
Love it.
infraction after that, like I can't remember what it is, but I think it's like you lose it for like good. Like the next time they take it, like they don't give it back to you or something. It's like something crazy. I want to be like, what they should do is they should like take a hammer and just smash it.
Yeah.
They should you should get to destroy it
Yeah.
if you get caught, if you get busted 2 or 3 times in a row.
One of the reasons I wanted to bring that up because I always say, Larry Wingate is a friend of mine here in Phoenix. We haven't connected in a bit, but he wrote a book a long time ago called "Your Kids Are Your Own Fault,"
Mm.
and I love that book. I love the title. And so anytime I read these studies, I think, okay, well, that's on me. I mean, he even says, social media should not happen until you're a teenager. You shouldn't get a cell phone until you're 16. I mean, some of the stuff you're thinking, oh man, good luck with that, right? It's
Yeah,
aspirational, but it's our job as the parents to run intervention, just like you did with your kids when your family's there. How
yeah,
many more opportunities, if you take your dad's age,
yeah. Not much, right?
yeah, you think, okay, take his age, time the average, in the genetics of your family, you're like, okay, they're going to have 8 more opportunities, 10 more opportunities to have that
Yeah,
time. That cell
yeah.
phone, they're going to be back in front of that in a few minutes. So I'm challenging myself. I'm challenging you. I'm challenging our viewers out there. Take a stand for this stuff. We don't take a stand. We fall for anything, as the quote goes. But when it comes to this study, I'd recommend you read it. Again, if you don't want to read the whole book, you can go and read the whole highlighted executive summary on ChatGPT. But I thought it'd be important for people to get.
What we should do? We should try to have him on the show. We should try to have the author of that
Oh, that's a
study
good
on the
call.
show.
It's a good
So
call.
say his name one more time. Let's call him out. Let's see
All
if
right.
the internet can help us track this
Yes.
guy down.
Jonathan Haidt. It's Jonathan, Jonathan, Haidt, Haidt. Jonathan Haidt. I got the book. I'm not all the way through it. I don't know a lot about the guy, but I do know that some principals that are here in the Valley that are passionate about the guy. So I'm sure we can find access to this guy.
All right, let's let the internet do its thing and see who
Love
can
it.
make an introduction to Jonathan for us. Jonathan, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on the show.
Love to have you on. Absolutely, man. Well, that's good, man. I appreciate the time to talk about that today.
Yeah, right on. All right, everybody. We will see you all next time on What's Your Story with Scott Leese and Mike Lindstrom. Stay tuned for this episode coming out. And then afterwards, I don't want to do the reveal yet, but
Yeah.
we've
All
got
right.
episode 5 is going to be incredible.
Epic. Very eclectically epic. That's my word.
Yes.
Eclectically epic.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, everybody. We'll see you next time.